touch on very briefly some of the ways that you've been able to help yourself move on and help yourself heal. If you want to just touch on that very briefly.
Yeah, I'll say first and foremost, what helped me the most years ago was I let someone in. I let the right person in. That person for me was my then girlfriend, now wife. And it's a lot of times easier said than done, because that's where we're most scared, where we're most vulnerable, where maybe we don't feel like we have anyone that we can trust or love enough, or trust and loves us enough to receive that in the way that we're still going to feel safe and secure. But I promise you, you do have at least one person in your life, or if you're wanting to make work and progress in this area, work towards developing and nurturing a relationship with someone. You could even be that someone. Get a pen and paper, journal, voice memo, like just get it out. Find the right person, let the right person in. Beyond that, getting consistent professional mental health help has really been my saving grace. I've done all the things, right? I've journaled, I've listened to all the podcasts, read all the self-help books. I've done years and years and years of self-help work, but also letting the right person in. But it wasn't really until I found consistent quality mental health help that I was able to really, really shed those layers and really, really move forward. And specifically for me, that came in a very radical psychotherapy experience called ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. About a year and a half ago, undergoing traditional psychotherapy coupled with ketamine therapy, multiple sessions. And in the first 1-2 sessions, I really got, I'd say, years of work, because it really does do that. Like I was talking earlier, it allows detachment of the self. It allows detachment of the self to really look at my life and my experiences. And I went in with the intention to finally work through my PTSD, because it had been 16, 17 years at that time, and I was still stuck. I wanted to get into, which is weird to say out loud, I wanted to get over it. I wanted to just like, Chase, your dad passed away, like move on. He wants you to move on. But I didn't know how. There was still some part of me that was latching on. There was no latching on after that. So that was really the thing that catapulted me, moved me forward the most, and gave me personally, my experience, years and years of therapy in about, an hour experience, and really gave me closure and acceptance in a big, big way around the death of my father.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people that have used that and have found great success with it as well. And I do want to say, I'm not here condoning or saying everybody should go out and do that. I'm saying that for some people, it's been definitely helpful and successful.
And the beauty here in the United States, at least, it's a federally legal treatment, federally legal course of action. They have a lot of great services out there now where you can do this type of therapy, at home via telehealth. But my personal kind of, I've done them all. But I can tell you, me personally, especially at that level of emotional pain that I was in, again, going in with diagnosed finally PTSD, I I can't imagine my life without that experience now, without those experiences. Truly getting closure around the death of my father. I can tell you now, after going through many experiences over the past year and a half, I am in acceptance of grief. This is the first time ever I've been able to hold conversation about this and just completely not even get a tear in my eye. Not that I'm disregarding those emotions. I know the pain is still there, and I know what I went through, but I can finally separate then from here and now.
Yeah.
And that was impossible for me before.
Right. So, I wanted you to share that experience and share how you've been able to move through your PTSD, move through your grief, move through your trauma, because I know that for the people who listen to me, the people in my community who are dealing with a lot of trauma in relationships, whether it's business, whether it's personal, they're dealing with transition. I know that listening to you, listening to your story will be immensely helpful for them. And to know you're
I
here,
hope.
you're on the other side. How are you feeling today?
Fantastic. I'm I'm at peace. I actually had this weekend I shared earlier was the 18-year memorial, or 2 days ago from our recording this was the 18-year memorial of my father's passing. He died January 22nd, 2005. And I went in this weekend for my most intense, my highest dose ketamine therapy session. And at the end of it, I was even sharing with my wife after, just peace. I
Mm.
am finally at peace. And I think whether you have lost a loved one or you've been through a traumatic injury like myself, or just life, life is not easy for any of us these days. Your story is your story and your trauma is your trauma. But I can tell you, if you've been doing the work and you're feeling there's still just something holding you down and you're still stuck, and it's your choice now to face that and to move forward, I can tell you, no matter which protocol you choose, and no matter what modality you go down, if you make that commitment to yourself with time and work, there is peace waiting for you. I believe that time heals all wounds, but that does not exclude us from doing the work alongside of time. And
Absolutely.
peace is where I'm at. And that is what I hope for everybody
You
else.
know that actually one of the most highly searched terms on the internet is, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And I believe that the reason why you are here is that is what you are actually really searching for, is, who am I? What is my purpose? You're just rediscovering yourself, rediscovering your light and your soul, and you're realizing that what has been happening to you is actually what happened for you. And that is really what happened with me. I dealt with a narcissistic business partner, and I've also dealt with narcissists in my life in a number of different ways. I was even bullied as a kid. And I think that everything that happened in my life ended up being a confluence of events that happened for me, because I ended up here and helping people through this, what I think is kind of like the dark night of the soul, in dealing with narcissists and dealing with toxic people and high conflict people. And kind of, you end up taking people's hand, and then you realize, wait a minute, I can actually help people too. And I think that's what's going to end up happening for you. You're going to see, I can rebuild my self-esteem and then turn around and help others do the same thing. And that's what I do now through my slay programs. And then I even have a master high conflict certification program, which, I have so many coaches that are now taking people and helping them through the darkest times too. Together we can be that force. And so I'm going to guide you through this crucial journey in rebuilding and overcoming that narcissistic abuse. I mean, narcissists excel in eroding your self-worth, and often covertly. They start off with this whole love bombing, and they start off with this, it's this perfect life, and all of your dopamine is just going off in your brain, and you think everything is going to be perfect and wonderful, and it's all amazing. And then in comes the gaslighting and the projection and the deflection, and this relentless belittlement. And you think, wow, what is going on? So, a vivid example for me comes, Mark, this past client, who he had this narcissistic business partner who, his uh, partner would claim to forget things or misremember things, and that is a classic sign of 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 belittlement, a classic sign of gaslighting. And over time, Mark doubted his memory issues, his judgment issues, his capabilities. It's not that he was forgetting things or misremembering things. It's, they do that just to mess with you so that you feel less than. And then when you call them out on it, then they get angry at you, angrier, and they smear you and they make you feel worse. And it's all these little things. I forgot to pick up that thing at the store for you, or I don't have time to pick that thing up for you, that's out of my way. And all of these things that, just little cuts. It's just death by 1,000 cuts all the time. And it's so small that, the time, you tell people about it, they think, oh, I think that was inadvertent or whatever. And it erodes and chips away at your self-esteem enough over time that you just you really feel like you're going crazy. You're waking up in the middle of the night, you're thinking about it. You wake up in the morning, you're thinking about it. You're brushing your teeth, you're thinking about it. So one of the things that you can do is take a deep dive into narcissistic tactics. Really start educating yourself. You can identify gaslighting. You can identify projection. I say projection and deflection, lying and denying. Keep my book, Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win. Very handy for you. You can go to slaythebully.com and check it out, or anywhere you buy books, and highlight the sections that resonate with you. Knowledge is truly power. Knowledge is definitely your armor, and that will help you so much. The other thing you can do is go to disarmthenarc.com and get my free phrases for disarming narcissists, because then you'll have something to say to them when you feel powerless, when you feel like they are ganging up on you. The next thing you can do is literally stand in front of the mirror. So I call it daily mirror work. Literally stand in front of the mirror. I know we look in the mirror every day, but normally it's just to, put your makeup on or brush your hair or whatever it is. But do we really look at ourselves? Do we really look at ourselves and say, I believe in you. I believe in you. You are worthy. I believe in you. You are worthy. And I know it seems awkward at first, but try this. Try mending the bond with your true self. And I want you to put that in the comments right now. I am worthy. I am worthy. It's hard, so hard to believe, and it's so hard to say. It really is, but try it. Professional guidance. Professional guidance will really help you. Seek a therapist. Try specializing, try one who's specializing in trauma, narcissistic abuse. Their expertise can provide tailored strategies and deeper insights. Try considering group therapy for experiences and validation. Heart math is a really cool way of meditation as well. If you've ever tried that, it's a really, really beautiful type of therapy. Journaling and reality checks, making sure you're taking, writing down what's really happening, documenting so that they can't come back and say, that's not what we talked about. Don't you remember? This is what we said, making sure, because that documentation will turn into your best leverage. I talk about that all the time in my Slay program, how to turn your best documentation into leverage, right? So when you're doubting yourself, you can go revisit those notes. They turn into really great summaries, and they serve as tangible reality checks against gaslighting as well. Okay. So journaling and reality checks, right? So the next one is rebuilding with intent. So set small goals for yourself, small goals. I always say you need to have baby steps. Even the smallest of goals for yourself will allow you to rebuild your confidence. So if you just say, I'm going to walk around the block once a day, and then you accomplish that goal, it makes you feel better. And actually writing down your goals and then checking them off each day, that rebuilds your confidence. They say that actually checking off a list and writing down a list and checking it off rebuilds your confidence. So by seeing that you're doing what you say you're going to do, that really, really helps to rebuild your confidence. So rebuild with intent, set small goals. Maybe it's reading a chapter a night, a weekly dance class, volunteering. Achieving goals that you set for yourself ignites your belief in yourself and your abilities. Boundaries is the last one. So important. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. If that first boundary that you set is that you are just going to say, I am going to be spoken to with respect. I'm going to be spoken to with respect. You start to see that person as if you are observing them as a third party, observing them as a toddler having a tantrum on the floor. We can have this conversation when you're ready to speak to me with respect. Such a great place to start. You deserve to be spoken to with respect. Demand that you are spoken to with respect. You know what is negotiable? Contracts, issues, terms. What's never negotiable? Your self-respect, your self-esteem, your self-worth. Period. Stick to those like glue. Define what's acceptable and what's not. I want you to write down at the bottom, I am worthy, and stick to your boundaries.
So then this sets the person up for what I call the WTF, or the what the Freud. Okay, so here comes a partner, let's say, and that partner is somebody that reminds them of the injury of not mattering. And at first, they feel that they've conquered the not mattering part because they're being love bombed. Wow, finally, somebody thinks I'm mattering. And so I think I'll pair myself with this individual. And pretty soon, those little crumbs of mattering become very, very intermittent. And as we know, intermittent reinforcement is the most powerful reinforcement schedule of all, because if I receive a crumb, wow, that's really special, as opposed to lots of regular reinforcements and what I call is a secure attachment, because people who are injured are used to insecure attachment. And so by conquering the person that treats them like mom or dad, they're going back into the repetition principle, and they're trying to win the game that they didn't win then, and they'll never win this round. And then they go down into chaos because they get re-triggered, and then they try to defend themselves, and this is where the drug, sex, rock and roll comes in, and whatever else they do. Some people cut themselves, some people just simply
This is self-flagellation.
yeah, they opt out of life. Some people defend by watching porn or being on the cell phone all day, and there's just so many creative ways that people defend themselves. And at the end of that game, they break down. There's that blowout. There's that final, the final discard, or the final breakdown where they're suicidal or they're homicidal. This could be an explode also. It doesn't have to necessarily be an implode. So what do we do when we can't hold our feelings? We're either imploding and destroying ourselves, or we're projecting and exploding onto other people.
And a lot of people are just stuck in there, stuck in that level, and they never get. So I just want to kind of to give people a picture of what you're describing. you have this mind map, and we're going to go ahead and make sure we show it on the video, but for the
Yeah,
people who
thanks.
are listening versus
Yeah.
on the podcast, I
Yes.
want to just kind of give them a visual. It's 9 boxes, is her mind map, and so just picture 9 boxes, kind of like a Brady Bunch sort of look, and the top
Okay.
the top row is your past, and
Yeah.
that's where you talk about your wound reaction and encoding, which you just
Correct.
described. And
Correct.
that middle row is your current, your where you are now, and
Correct.
that's your chaos, your defenses, and your breakdown or breakthrough.
Correct.
And then you take people through each one of these things, so that they have to actually spend time understanding what their wounds are, how they've reacted to them, what their encoding is. Like you actually take them through this so they understand how they
That's right.
ended up where they are today. And
Right.
then now we're getting into the third row, which is the last 3 boxes, which is your paradigm shift, your healing, and unity. So why don't we go through those? So they've gone to their breakdown and breakthrough, and so now
Okay.
now
Okay.
what?
I just want to back up for a moment to the breakdown, breakthrough.
Sure.
The breakthrough is actually the release of the psychological toxins. It's very important that they get in touch with the cause and hold energetically responsible the injurers. And we do that through a series of truth conversations. And in the truth conversations, they get to actually express all the range of emotions that they were not able to express to their primary caregivers, usually mother or father. Now, please know, audience, that I'm not advising people to call mommy or daddy and give them a lowdown of what they did to you. This is something that would re-injure the person, because if you're dealing with narcissistic parents, they don't have the empathy to heal. The herder can't be the healer. So it's a bad choice to call your parents and try to work this through with them. So what we do is we work it out in the therapeutic environment so that they get to release these toxins, reprocess everything, identify the lies as opposed to identify with the lies. And then they can start moving into the paradigm shift. The paradigm shift is where they are now aware of their cracked lens of perception, which is all the lies and the patterns that they bought into, and now they're seeing clearly. Their boundaries are more defined, and I refer to the biological model of the permeable and the non-permeable and the semi-permeable model. The permeable is more the borderline features where people don't have the boundaries and they can't set limits and they don't have the self-esteem. And then the non-permeable are more the narcissists and the paranoids, they're walled off. And then the semi-permeable are the people who are able to vet, who can come into their inner circle or their medium circle. They can vet what's healthy for them, what's not healthy for them. And then they can choose appropriate growth partners. They could choose synergistic partners, because it then becomes not a 1 + 1 is less than 2 or even less than 1 formula, which is the vampiring effect. It becomes a new game of life where the 1 + 1 is now a greater than 2. It's a synergistic effect. So now people are taught to pair with growth partners, whether they be business partners or marital partners or friendship partners, relationship partners, doesn't matter. It's the 1 + 1 is greater than 2 phenomenon, and that's the new game of life. And then they get to encode what is going to support that particular system gone right. Because remember, we're turning the system gone wrong around 180 degrees. And now the encoding becomes, well, what are you putting in your mouth? Is that evolving you, or is that devolving you? Is that friendship evolving you, or is that friendship demeaning, devaluing, and destroying you? Is that choice in education authentic to you? Do you really want to become an attorney or a psychologist, or and what, what is authentic to you? So this is where it becomes real, where people are choosing and encoding, and now they are, quote, the cause of part two of their life. And now they're able to basically construct their own world. Who do you want in your world? What kind of food do you want to eat? What kind of people are enhancing you? What kind of colors do you want to surround yourself with?
Well, and I would even add to that is like I call it your inner head trash. That little idiot that lives inside of your brain that says you're not good enough in some way. When I was kind of dealing with this whole paradigm shift myself years ago,
Yeah,
I had to like retrain my brain. Like, who's having that thought? Is it the idiot? Or is it the person that I'm creating myself to be?
correct.
Is it the new person? And
Exactly.
distinguishing where that old thought pattern is actually coming from, and if it's true, look for evidence in reality. Is it true? Most of us, I think, have this syndrome that, and it's kind of cliche, but it's true, that if you did a talk in front of 100 people in the room and
Mhm.
99 of the percent of them said you were amazing and it was
Yeah,
the best talk they ever heard,
right.
and one person says you sucked, you're going to go home and think about the one person who said you sucked the whole entire
And,
time.
and so this is the difference between cognitive behavioral therapy and affirmations. We're actually dismantling panel three. So the very thing that triggered the individual, I don't matter, I suck, I'm stupid, I'm incompetent, I'm never going to be good enough. All of that stuff gets literally dismantled, and it's pinned back to the cause. It goes back to the cause. This is not the message. This is not my message. This is a message that was blueprinted. It's inauthentic. It's based on a lie. We're releasing the emotional toxicity. So if a person with narcissistic personality dynamics comes along and demeans or devalues, tries to destroy, that panel three is now no longer active. We have dismantled the bomb so they can press and press and press as much as they want, and no reaction. And that's how you step out of the game of dancing with the narcissist. You dismantle the whole system. And so they walk away because it's not interesting to you anymore. You don't beg and plead that they see you differently, or no, I'm not stupid, no, I'm not ugly, come on, don't you think I'm beautiful, please love me. So that whole game is shot. So
Because
there's
you
nothing to
already
play
know
with.
that you have internal value.
Yeah,
You've created that internal feeling. I mean, we all are inherently valuable. We just don't feel it.
right. And so it's really a matter of dismantling something that people are very unconscious of. They've been set up to do this. It's sort of like um, kind of like a grooming. They've been groomed to think this way. They've been groomed to be taken advantage of. And once you shine the truth light on all these aspects, then it loses its power. It's kind of like Dorothy. Once the curtain is pulled back from the wizard, okay, or Toto does it, the truth dog. Toto, the truth dog, pulls back the curtain, and there's this silly old man manipulating the levers, creating this land of Oz, and it's just an illusion. And that's what people get to experience in the process of the mind map system. It's their parents' creation. It's been a multi-generational creation, and it has nothing to do with their authentic self. And once this is exposed, they can start to grow.
All right. So, 8 ways to move on from narcissists. The first thing you have to do now, remember, you've been conditioned from the beginning. You've been love bombed, you've been charmed. They come along, they are the most charming, incredible people on the planet. Seriously, they know how to become exactly what it is that you need to see, because they've been reading you from the beginning. The reason why they know how to do that is because they started off from the time that they were children as needing this as a survival skill. I say, like Malcolm Gladwell's like 10,000 hours to achieve mastery, right? They had like their 10,000 hours by the time they were like 10 years old, because this is a survival skill for them to be able to read people, to be able to become exactly what they need you to be, or you need them to be, rather. So they've been conditioning you from the beginning. So the first thing you need to do is go no contact. And that's like the hardest thing to do. So I say, step one, don't run, go no contact right away, because you are shutting down the fumes. You're shutting down that toxic energy, that toxic stuff that's in your air. I saw somebody talking one time about this analogy of somebody, and it's kind of gross, so I'm just gonna go there, okay? But it is kind of gross, but I have to go there. This analogy of somebody peeing in your pool, right? Like if you were standing in your own pool or your own hot tub or whatever, and somebody peed in it, you'd be like, that's disgusting. Get out and don't ever come here ever again. But that's kind of what they're doing. It's like that toxic stuff, like there, and you got to get it away from you. So you've got to go no contact so that you can start to clean up that energy, so you can start to feel better. Part of the way that you do that is, I'm going to say, go to number 2, which is to start to set boundaries for yourself. All right. So how do you set boundaries? Well, one of the ways that you can set boundaries for yourself is to have one form of communication, because one of the things that is going to happen when you decide to move on is that they're going to just go insane, because they realize that they're losing a form of narcissistic supply. They're losing their grip on you. The difference between you as a person and you as a possession, because they don't care about you as a person. They're going to love bomb you, and they're going to make it seem like they care about you as a person, but they don't care about you as a person. They're going to go after you as a possession. Oh, there goes my form of supply. There goes what I need. They need you to be filling that hole for them. They don't care about you as a person. They don't care about your needs or ever satisfying your needs. So they're going to light you up. They're going to show up at your house or office. They're going to be sending you all kinds of emails. They're going to be guilt tripping you. They're going to be flooding your inbox. They're going to be flooding your emails, flooding your texts. They're going to go crazy on you, and they're going to guilt trip you, and they know exactly the things to say. And you can't allow that to happen. So you've got to like winnow it down to one form of communication, and you've got to allow yourself to have that space to heal. And the communication, if you're having any communication at all, I say no communication at all. But if you have to communicate with this person, then it's got to be only one form of communication. And it's only about the kids, or it's only about work, or it's only about this particular topic. So how do you set those boundaries? You pretend like you're reporting the news. Basically, you don't explain, you don't justify, you don't defend yourself. You don't need to go point by point by point and explain every single thing. If they send you this whole long email on every single thing, accusing you of everything under the sun, you can just say, I deny that. I deny everything you said there. That's all you need to say. And then you can just go through and pick out the one thing that you need to respond to, and that's it. And I recommend that if you have to correspond, you use email, or if you have children, you can use one of those apps that you want something that has a time and date stamp. You want something that can't be manipulated. Texts can be easily manipulated and they don't have a time and date stamp. Okay. So those are the first two ways that you can start to move on. The next way that you can start to move on is start to get educated. Start to get educated. Start to get information. Start to get all the knowledge that you can. Because the more knowledge that you start to gain, the more that you start to realize, hey, this wasn't me. This was them. And you start to realize this was a person that was broken. And you'll start to realize, I don't need to take this personally, because I know that I have value. And the faster you start to recognize that, the faster you will start to heal. So start to gain knowledge, start to get educated, start to understand narcissism, start to understand whatever it is that you need to understand, whatever it is the process is that you need to understand, right? So if you are getting ready to go into a negotiation, start understanding that process. If, whatever it is that you need to start educating yourself on, that's the next step of what you need to do. Okay. The next thing that you need to do is start documenting absolutely everything. Document, document, document. Absolutely everything. Document everything that you need to document, because you definitely are going to be needing to protect yourself. Remember that, they're going to try to trigger you. They're going to try to do things to try to get under your skin. Anticipate that. Start creating a strategy. Start creating your leverage. That's my SLAY methodology, right? So strategy, leverage, anticipate, focus on you. It works. It absolutely works. And remember, your leverage is going to be thinking about your diamond level supply and your coal level supply. What's going to be more important for a narcissist to protect and defend than the supply that they get from jerking you around, right? And that's how you develop it. And that's what I teach you in my SLAY program. And by the way, if you don't have access to a support system, we do offer that in my free Facebook group, so make sure you join that. You definitely want to have access to support. And we do have a sponsor on this channel, which is BetterHelp. And you can go to betterhelp.com/Rebecca Zung to get that help if you need it, because we just want you to have access to the help and support and guidance that you need, something that you can trust. We get commissions on that. It doesn't cost you any extra. So that's the next thing. The next thing that you're going to want to do is start to visualize the things that you actually want. Where is it that you want to go? What is it that you actually want to do? What is it that you want from your life? Because, a lot of times people don't think about that. When you're dealing with a narcissist, you spent so much time defending yourself, you forget to actually think about what it is that you want. And you've been erased for so long too, that you kind of almost forgot about the fact that you get to have needs, you get to have wants, you get to have thoughts for yourself, because they didn't allow that for you for so long either, too. So this is your moment. This is your moment to get to go, wow, I get to have a life. I get to think about the great things in my life. And, somebody recently said to me that he was going to think about the majors in his life instead of the minors in his life. And I thought that was such a beautiful thought. The majors in his life are the big F's, he said, instead of the small things. So, family and finances and, like the major amazing things in his life, right? So think about the big things in your life that matter to you the most. That matter to you the most, and for him, he included philanthropy in that. It's like an F sound, and he considered, all of the major things in his life that matter to him the most. So but think about the things in your life that matter to you the most. Write those down and start visualizing those things. What matters to you the most, and start writing them out and start creating a plan for that. And then the next thing is I want you to think about taking time to allow yourself to be okay with being sad, be okay with being angry, be okay with sitting with your feelings. So I'm going to just say, allow yourself to go, I'm going to just be okay with whatever it is that I feel. Because you know what? The only way out is through. And you can't rush that. You can't rush that. I just had a whole conversation with somebody who had dealt with a lot of trauma in many different ways because of a husband, because of several different things. And she was kind of upset with herself because she felt like she should be further along. And I reminded her it had only been like 6 months since certain things had happened, with her husband and with other things. And she was like, you know what? You're right. Has only been 6 months, so allow yourself time to process and don't be too hard on yourself. If you're still feeling sad, you're still feeling angry, you're still feeling resentful, you're still feeling like you missed the person, that's okay too. Because, especially if you had a life with a person for a long time, that's all right. You can sit there and journal out what it is that you're feeling and say, I'm still feeling this or that or whatever. Emotions are tricky things, and things can be triggered by the craziest things too. We can be triggered by a smell. We can be triggered by hearing a song. We can be triggered by seeing somebody that you can be triggered just by seeing an interaction because, our brain is networked, right? And just the familiarity of certain things causes a network of neurons to be engaged. And then there you are, it all gets lit up in there and things start getting fired up. And there you are, right? So it's okay to have that happen. So the next thing I'm going to say to you is find your vibe tribe. Find your vibe tribe because that is critically important to have that support group. And I started to allude to that a little bit earlier in this where I said, join the Facebook group and find, your therapist and that sort of thing. That is just so important to have that vibe tribe, to have that self-care, to find your ways to have your self-care. Because if you don't have ways to take care of yourself, have ways to find your vibe tribe, you're not going to make it because you need support. One of the things that narcissists have done from the beginning is isolate you. And I do have an inner circle that I definitely invite you to join as well. It's my Slay Inner Circle. And the link for that is slayinnercircle.com. You want to have a place where you can go, where you can feel accepted, supported, loved, like the old Cheers show, right? Where everybody knows your name. Find your vibe tribe, find your people. You definitely probably are going to want to have some sort of therapy, whether it's from a clergy or a therapist or something, really somebody who can help you with your trauma and, dealing, because you are in trauma. You are definitely, your body has dealt with a lot of trauma, and processing that trauma is so, so important. So important. Okay. And then the last thing that I'm going to suggest that you do is find something that you can pivot to. Find something that when your brain starts to go to the past, I want you to have something that you can immediately pivot to that is your present and your future. That helped me so much. It still helps me. I always joke that I can't leave my thoughts unsupervised. And so I want you to put in the comments right now, pivot, P-I-V-O-T, pivot, because that is so important. That is something that it has been absolutely critical for me. When my thoughts start going into the dark alley of, I call it the ghetto of my brain, I have to find, the good neighborhood again. And how I do that is I find like the good neighborhood, the what am I focusing on that's creative for me? What am I focusing on that is helping people, like making good videos for you guys, or doing things that I know serve my purpose in life, is doing great things for serving my soul, making me feel better, making me feel like I know I'm doing the right thing in the world, and not allowing myself to go down the path of I'm in victim mode. Because anytime you allow the narcissist to rent space in your head free, they're not paying for that space, you're allowing yourself to be a victim. Don't give them that space. Don't give them that satisfaction. Move on. It's time to move on. It's time to pivot. It's time for you to slay. It's time for you to be the best version that you can be. And giving them any more time, any more space is not the best version of yourself. So the next video I want you to watch is self-care for dealing with narcissists. It's a great video that I did. I have tons and tons and tons of ways that you can engage in self-care, and because self-care is so important. So important. Yeah, well, you know what it means to heal from being in a toxic situation, toxic relationship. You've been there.
Mhm.
And you're willing to tell your story, and you're willing to talk about what that means, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I feel like that's probably one of the most important things to do for other people that are going through trauma, is to bring that voice forward. You see that with a lot of people where, they don't necessarily recognize the situation they're in. And it only takes somebody providing a voice and telling their story and being able to reflect, because when you're in it, you're immersed in it. You don't necessarily know what pain is or normal is, or what it feels like to be in a healthy dynamic, until you have a sense of you're looking at it from the outside. And sometimes looking at it from the outside can be as simple as hearing a voice from the outside that is not what is normal, healthy, productive, empowering. And it's like when somebody lives their whole life with back pain, that's just their normal. That's their zeroed out, is they just live with this back pain. And until it's healed, only then do they realize the kind of pain that they were in. Similar to static in a room. Somebody could think they're in a quiet room, and then you turn off the static, and then you realize how quiet it actually is. That was similar to my uncoupling from my own intimate relationships and some of the family dynamics and the things that I've been, where there was this kind of narcissistic, almost where they hover an energy vampire, and it's just small little ways that you don't necessarily you don't necessarily question. And only after you're on the outside of those dynamics and you have a healthy core, where only then you can realize the contrast that was all around you. And I've got to say that's probably my exact experience with multiple things is I was so programmed and so brainwashed in this dynamic that was 360 all around me, with family, with intimacy, with friendships, with business arrangements that I had. It was all over the place. And only after doing the work here did I recognize that toxicity and unhealthy communication styles and blame and dissociation and gaslighting and things like that were all not in the realm of what it feels like, to the point where being in healthy dynamics and in healthy friendships, it almost felt foreign. I was looking around for the other shoe to drop. I was waiting for to be victimized again, for somebody to get their hooks in me for the catch. And so, yeah, it's definitely, the healing process was an onion layer for me. You peel back one and you think you've kind of got somewhere, you still got more questions. And then as you learn more, you learn that you have more questions. And then you finally get to that core of who you are. And only then can you recognize what crosses your path. And you're like, this doesn't align. This isn't for me. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel supportive. That doesn't feel healthy.
I know for me, it just, like all of a sudden, because it was like little things, because I was dealing with a covert narcissist. Well, I had two different ones in my life, but the one that you knew about, it was, it was like this death by 1,000 cuts. There were like a whole bunch of little things that weren't right.
Yeah.
But, with covert narcissists, they're so subtle and they're really, really good at being passive aggressive and just manipulative enough to get under your skin, but they live on this balance of this teetering of just enough to annoy you and traumatize you, but not enough for the world to see what they're doing to you.
Yeah.
So the rest of the world sees them as good and kind and great and so nice and wonderful people, and only you see that other side of them. And so it's that whole gaslighting thing of making you think like you're the one that's crazy because look, the rest of the world thinks I'm amazing.
Yes.
And so it's really, really tough. And I know for me, one of the things, because I'm a ruminator and I was like always obsessing over what is this person doing? What are they going to do next? And, and so I would say one of the things that people can do to stop, and I say this in other videos as well, is like, don't obsess. Don't stop. I had this epiphany of if I'm like obsessing about what this other person is going to do to me next, or is stabbing me behind the back, or whatever they're doing.
Yes.
I'm not creating. I'm not in positive mode. I'm not experiencing joy in my life at that moment.
Yes. Yes.
So can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. Okay. So obsessional thoughts, what that really is control. Okay. Let me think about this over and over and over again, so I can in some way control whether this person is going to hurt me. How is he or she behaving, right? What's going to happen, right? So that's all about trying to control your future, which is an illusion. It's impossible. Okay. Now, control issues put your physical brain into fight, flight, freeze, right? Remember, going back to that brain, that physical brain that's geared towards survival, okay? When we're trying to control something that we have no control over, which is somebody else's behavior, we have no control over how somebody else behaves, okay? But we're trying to find that control over something that we have no control over. So exactly what you're saying, when we're in
So say that again. Fight, flight, freeze.
Fight, flight, freeze. It is the primitive part of our brain, okay? It is the primitive part of our brain that is only rooted in survival. That's your survival mechanism, okay? Is trying to control your future so that you don't have pain. which sets you up to always feel this overwhelming sense of fear because we can't control the future.
And we can't
So
control the other person.
you can't control the other person, and you can't control anything that isn't right here, right now. You can control your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior. And so when you are in fight, flight, freeze brain, you don't have access to the higher level of thinking in other parts of your brain. And it is those parts of your brain that are associated with creativity, innovation, groundedness, right? You don't have any access to that. So you get into, when you talk about obsession, what you're talking about is this repetitive thought loop where you've got a thought that leads to a feeling, that leads to a behavior, that leads to another thought, right? And before you know it, you're in this vicious cycle of a thought that keeps looping.
Yeah. And it just is like the loop of insanity. It's basically the definition of insanity, because there's never going to be any good outcome from that.
Yeah.
And when you were saying something about, you were expecting this narcissist or this toxic person to, make you feel better or feel, love or whatever. The flip side of that is people who will say to me, he makes me feel like crap. He makes, or she makes me feel blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so giving them that power of saying, I'm going to allow you to dictate how I feel. And I'm giving you that permission to dictate how I feel. And you're giving this person who feels worthless about their own selves.
That's right.
To dictate how you're going to feel. And you're never going to have any satisfaction from that.
That's right.
So I want to also talk about, a lot of people who are dealing with these people, they're constantly going, why are they doing this? A reasonable person wouldn't act this way.
Right.
So talk about, how to stop trying to apply reason to unreasonable.
That's right. So where you lose your reasoning, right? If you are in a toxic relationship where you lose your reasoning is by buying into the thought, okay, which is really fundamentally a belief, right? A belief is a thought we think over and over and over again, okay? So the belief is you make me feel worthless, no good, right? You make me feel that way. Now, here's the thing. Okay, if you're a healthy person, the most fundamental thing that you can do as far as shifting into a different mind is recognizing that there isn't a human being alive that can make you feel worthless, unlovable, unimportant, no good. Okay, they behave how they behave. It is your thoughts about how they behave that makes you feel these emotions. And most people don't understand that, right? Most people do really believe that it is this person that makes me feel that way, or it is this circumstance that makes me feel that way.
So it's a faulty logic and cause and effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is our thoughts.
Right.
It starts with our thoughts. Our thoughts determine our emotions, determine our behavior. So when we can recognize, right, that we can control our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, we can let go and let people, they're going to behave how they behave. This narcissist is going to behave how she or he behaves. There is nothing that has nothing to do with you.
No.
And the only thing that we can do, right, when we're in a better mindset,
and even if they say it's your fault, you caused this, blah, 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 it's still not. I mean, they're going to say that, right?
They're going to say that. That's listen, so the narcissist's automatic thought is always it's your problem. That's what a narcissist does. There's no ability to take ownership, right?
Right.
And that's why they have a string of, right, like dysfunctional relationships. So the narcissist will always blame you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for me, one of the things that was really important I had to recognize, oh my God, this person is sick. Or these people that I'm dealing with are narcissists. That's what they are. They're not going to get better. It's really sad. It's too bad. You want things to be different because, I'm a fixer. I have always been able to fix things, make things happen, and
Yep.
so I thought that I could fix it, make it better, have it be at least cordial, have it be at least, but you just can't do that when you're dealing with a person who is sick.
No.
And so acknowledging your own behavior, acknowledging what you did to um, allow this to happen
Yes.
is
Yes.
is I think really important, because then that actually allows you to take control over and realize, okay, I have control for the next time,
Yes.
and forgive yourself and go, okay, this happened
Yes.
and I can learn from this. And now I know these things, but
Yes.
allowing, I allowed it to happen.
Yes.
I mean, I love Maya Angelou's, where she says,
I was just
when,
gonna
when
say.
people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And I didn't do that. And so
Yeah.
I had to take responsibility for that and then forgive myself and then move on.
Yes. Yes.
So
So
we have like a couple minutes, and I really want to get some of your like really awesome tidbits in there. So give
okay.
us your last thoughts on how people can really, move on and get over this.
Absolutely. Well, okay. So also to quote Maya Angelou, because she's so brilliant.
I know, I
Um,
love.
oh, she's amazing, right?
Yeah.
So she says that we are blind until we see, and that when we know better, we do better. Okay.
Oh,
And
yes,
so,
that's such a good one.
right, right. So here's the way it is for all human beings on the planet. All human beings, our lives, right, are a journey. Okay. And so with every step that we, right, every chapter of our lives, we're blind until we see. And so rather than looking back and saying, I should have done this and I shouldn't have done that, the way that you can see this is this relationship, as toxic as it was, okay, it's all in service of your growth. It's all in service of your journey, right? Remember I said
Yeah.
before, it's a mirror, so that really almost you needed to be in this relationship and have this painful experience so that you can wake up, because human beings, unfortunately for every one of us, we only grow when we're in pain.
Yeah,
And
it's so
sometimes we got to
true.
get hit in the face with a 2x4 before we wake up. And
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
toxic relationships do. They wake us up.
Yep.
Yep.
What is it, Rumi, that says something like where the wound is, that's where the light enters, or something
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's so good. And that's
Yep.
so true. And, honestly, I wrote books on negotiation. I presented at Camp Empowerment on negotiation.
Yep.
And, my whole thing about negotiating with a narcissist has been born from having to deal with real narcissists in my real life. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been able to help, now thousands and thousands of people
Right.
because of the pain that I suffered, and helping people get past that.
Exactly. That's why I developed Dethroning Your Inner Critic, because of my 30-year journey of needing to unhook from my own automatic mind and rewire a new mind, right? It's like,
Yeah,
that's what happens. We learn from our pain and we
absolutely.
grow. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then you got divorced at
Did.
some point along the way. Yeah.
I did 10. Let's see, we got divorced in 2015, but I got separated in 2013 during my awakening moment of realizing that the life that I had created wasn't actually the life I wanted to live, which was pretty interesting when you have that awakening moment. I was on a yoga mat actually, and I'd done yoga probably like 3 times. I just finishing a bodybuilding competition, and a girlfriend of mine was having she was being filmed on TV because for yoga, because she was in the competition with me. And I remember being on that mat and having this massive breakthrough. I was in the what was it called? The frog pose. And I was just crying, and all this emotions were released from my hips. One of the things that I realized after decades of having unhealed trauma is that I had so much locked in me that wasn't processed of emotions. Because when you grow up with a narcissist or you grow up in a very toxic environment, you are not taught to feel your emotions. You are taught to freeze those emotions, and big girls don't cry, and you just kind of pick up and go along. And that's kind of what I did until that moment in my life where it was like this dam just like went, and it was like, okay, all right, I can't unsee and unfeel what just happened. Like something in my life has to change. It was in that moment my girlfriend was talking and she's like, are you really happy? And I'm like, I forgot who Shamina was. I was in such survival mode for so many years. And I'm sure many people can relate to that, where you're just like, you just get up and you just keep going, wake up, do the same thing over and over again. And I'm a high achiever. So being busy and accomplishing things were my go-to drug of how I survived, right? Until that moment. And there was no turning back. I realized, like, okay, things have to change. And a month later, my now ex-husband, he had moved, we decided he would move out. And I just spent the last 10 years on a journey of really finding who I was, breaking my patterns and healing. And it's been amazing.
Yeah. But you still continue to practice law after that.
I did for a little bit. And then I realized, like, I had a calling. On that mat that day, something came to me and said, you were here for something bigger. I just didn't know what. And, it's really scary because you have this, profession that you've been in for years that is guaranteed money coming in, and, it takes care of my family. And then, all the investment made into becoming a lawyer, it's not a cheap endeavor, to
Yeah,
do that. And also it's a highly widely respected profession. And I knew there
it
was
is.
something else calling to me, and I didn't know what it was, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew I couldn't ignore that calling.
And you do
And
well as an attorney. I used to hear people call it the golden handcuffs. Like you can't actually just leave it very easily.
no,
Right?
it wasn't. And, I think the it was like almost like serendipitous because the market was crashing, and, a lot of things were going and where people were trying to bounce back again. Things were changing in real estate, and my kids were 4 and 5 at the time. And my ex-husband was working a lot, so I had really scaled back on my practice. But I was afraid to let everything go because what if I did? What would happen? And there came a point where I just jumped, and I'm like, okay, I have to really figure out what this is. And I spent years working on myself, and I would take deals here and there, but I wasn't fully disconnected until eventually in 2008. I'm like, okay, I can't do both right now. It felt misaligned. And so then I decided, okay, 2019, this is it. I took some deals on, and then 2020, my business completely blew up, and it was amazing. We made 7 figures right away. It was amazing how I thought everybody did. So when I came on, it worked really well.
So
I mean,
during COVID, this is during COVID.
yeah, during COVID. And and at that moment I was like, I'm so glad I'm not practicing law right now, because where would I be going? Like Zoom rooms. I mean, r- people were, and I was a real estate attorney on top of that. Like the real estate industry had shut down. Lawyers weren't really practicing in that moment. And I feel spiritually I was aligned and I was set up for this new work that was coming my way. I just had to say yes and listen and trust the intuition and the voice that I couldn't really pinpoint. And being a lawyer, I'm so like, I still like this where I'm evidence based, and I look for facts. I look for things to make sense. And the stuff that was happening to me didn't make any sense. So I had to go deep and trust something inside of me that I didn't maybe always trust before. And when I started doing that healing work, I started getting really connected to that feminine energy inside of me. And I really started connecting to, my spiritual self, and just really trusting my soul, like this is the right thing to do. Even though there was no evidence to say, go ahead and do it. I had to keep trusting. And man, talk about faith. That was like a huge, huge jump in faith.
Mm, yeah. Well, it was during COVID that I made my jump onto YouTube and did all my stuff too. I
Right. Yeah.
mean, there were times that they were those times that you had to make decisions, you had to make changes, right? So, a lot of my people, my followers, viewers, listeners, subscribers, they're dealing with divorce, or they're dealing with divorcing specifically a high conflict personality or a narcissist or somebody like that. And so, you know, one of the things I talk a lot about is that the personality that is often targeted or victimized by a narcissist is usually an empathic person, but also a person who has their own sort of wounds, like maybe they deserve to be treated poorly, or they deserve, they don't,
Yeah.
they maybe had a narcissistic parent or something like that. So how does that person who just feels beat up beat up by the world, beat up by the person in their life. Like they can never win, they can never turn it around, they can't get out, there's no way out.
Yeah.
How did they start making these shifts in their self-talk and in
Yeah.
their ontology?
Well, I mean, my approach to it is not going to be like the way a lot of people would approach it, because ultimately all I'm interested is in freedom. Like, can you get free? Can you get on the other side of something?
Now, are you
Right?
talking about physical freedom or
All of
or
it. All of
mental
it.
freedom?
I'm talking about like how, I mean, we say stuff like I should let something go, right? I mean, everybody says it. Well, you'll have to get over it. Sometimes people will say, yeah, but how do you do it? Like, how do I actually get over it? How do I actually get free of something? Right. And so often when we're in situations like, for instance, say a dysfunctional marriage or a dysfunctional relationship, right? The however you're framing that for yourself is how it will live on with you. So you don't get to say, oh, that was traumatic and I got da, and then free of that. You're now going to carry that around with whatever language you've used to hold it for yourself.
Right.
And that's true of all of us for all of our past. Your past lives on in the kind of language you've used to capture it.
Mm-hmm.
So it lives on in your thoughts and that selection of words and phrases that you've used to capture it for yourself.
Yeah, and
So-
in a way, that's the only way it lives on, because it's not here anymore. It's
Very good.
gone.
That's really powerful. That's a powerful place to start, by the way, what you just said there, like really powerful. Like it only lives on in language. Now, in language, though, you have an emotional attachment to language. So that is, in the speaking of something, both to yourself and others, your emotions will rise and fall in the language you use, right? So for some people, they'll say, oh, this has been the worst day of my life. And it might not have been, right? It might have just been a tough day. But in the language, you'll have an emotional state, or as I just called it, a way of being that matches that language. So it would do one, the first step I would say to somebody is you got to get really present to, really checked in with what's the language I'm using to talk about this. And is it empowering me? Not like, because sometimes people think, well, yeah, it makes me kind of, yeah, screw them. That's not power, right? That's more like kind of resentment. Power is when you can say, I've released myself from that. I'm no longer attached to that. That's power,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you really got to look at, well, what's the language I'm using and what's the language I could use, right? That would allow me to kind of put that in a better spot for myself such that I can move on. Now, it seems like sometimes people think this is just semantics, but absolutely your past lives on in the language you use to describe it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's how it lives on in your life. So you got to be careful for two things. One, you might have been victimized, but it's incumbent upon you to make sure you don't become a victim, like a way of being.
Or continue to be.
Right. You got to, like, I might have been victimized about something. That's okay. But that does not diminish who I am as a human being.
Right.
Right. And at the same time, like from that moment on, when you have those moments where you want to kind of look back or you want to just blame or you want to just be, because that won't serve you, by the way, in terms of fulfilling on a brilliant future for yourself. You can't keep looking back and like they did and I should have and none of that'll serve you. Right. That'll just grind it on and grind it on and grind it on for you. But rather than starting to put it in perspective for yourself in a place that empowers you, it's got to empower you, right? And one of the worst things I think in my experience, I think you can do is turn yourself into the triumphant victim, because it still lives on.
I love that, triumphant victim,
right.
or even triumphant, survivor.
Right. I mean,
use a different word than victim. Right.
Like at what point do I say I'm over it,
Yeah.
And that really is what you're looking for. You're looking to get to the point where you can look at that time in your life and there's no attachment for you. Like you don't experience anything in terms of like negativity about it. Yeah. So that's why it's important for you to come to terms with the truth. It's important for you to tell the truth to yourself and be straight with yourself about it. And then don't give yourself permission to use it to justify your future self. So you can't give yourself permission to like, oh yeah, well that happened, so now I'm off the hook for it. No, you can't do that, because that way it's still living on for you.
Well, the thing is, though, I think that for some people, I mean, for some people I know who are listening, they're going to be going, but I'm still in it. He's still victimizing me, or she's still victimizing me. They're still treating me this way.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so it's hard sometimes to, you know, get past the gunfire when the guns are still aiming at you.
Right. So,
you know,
but at the same time, you got to realize, like, so if you go into Starbucks, for instance, it always smells like coffee, right? There's no time you go in there and you're like, oh, it smells like an oil refinery in here. It always smells like coffee. And discourse and upset and divorce, more often than not, it's not a good smell. You got to just come to terms with, this is how this is. Now, you know, one of the things that actually kind of put me on the map a long time ago is a statement that I made online. I said, you have the life that you're willing to put up with, right? Now, that seems kind of harsh, and I know it seems harsh to people, right? But that's our big problem as human beings. It's our willingness to tolerate certain things in our lives, including ourselves, by the way.
mhm.
Like, I tolerate myself. I tolerate no voice. I tolerate that about me. Now, that's ultimately what you'll be burdened by. Whatever you're tolerating about yourself, you'll be burdened by that. You'll find a way for that to get expressed in life. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I say to people, look, I had this was a long time ago, actually, I had a client. The guy said, you know, he was going through a divorce, and it was very, very messy with him and his former wife. And then eventually I just said to him, what do you want? Do you want a fair divorce, or do you want a divorce? And he said, well, I want a fair divorce. I said, okay, well, we're going to be here a while, and that's fine. I just want you to know, like, that's how it's going to go. Which went on for a few more months, and he just said, I just want a divorce. And they divorced within, I think, 4 weeks.